I am just fascinated with pioneer women. As someone who grew up on the East Coast, the thought of the frontier paving the way with wagon trains is so fascinating to me. It seems so far away, mostly because it is far away in states and in mileage, but also the fact that, I mean, on the East Coast, we've got the Civil War and we've got the start of America. And on the West, we have, or coin the phrase, where the West was young, and it was wild, and all these really brave people dropped everything, their homes, their possessions. They loaded up their families in these wagon trains, pulled by oxen, and made months long journey through barren land. And oh my gosh, the adventures they had. Although most of us like to think of Little House on the Prairie. You got Laura Ingalls running through the pastures of wildflowers, and the sky is blue, and we got amazing theme music, and everyone's smiling. As great as that makes you want to think that pioneering was, these people endured some hardships. And they were really strong and very courageous people to get out there and brave what they did. Whether it was snow, it was their cattle dying. I mean, come on. I grew up in the 90s. We all played Oregon Trail and we all died from dysentery at some point. But it was really extraordinary. So I'm very excited that I have this great story on a lady named Mary Thompson, who was truly a pioneer woman. Hey, this is Sarah, and you're listening to another episode on Ladies First, Not Really. The story it was an article in the newspaper, and her daughter, before she died, wanted her legacy to be known. She wanted to be known as a pioneer woman, and she wanted to make sure that her mother was known for the life that she lived and her contribution to being a pioneer woman all the way to Washington State. So here's her story. Mary Thompson was born Mary Shuck, February 5th, 1845. She was born in a two-story log cabin to a John and Nancy. The Shucks owned a farm in Iowa somewhere near Davenport. Mary recalled that at that time that was virgin territory. This would account that she did not have an exact location where the farm was in Iowa, probably because it was in the middle of nowhere. Around 1862, when she was 17, her father moved the family west and eventually settled in Nebraska. They traveled in a covered wagon in a wagon train consisting of 3 other families. She remembers the Indians and says they traveled through the prairies, but they did not disrupt them as they moved through. Mary remembered that Iowa was wild, but Nebraska was wilder. The family eventually found a place for their new farm. Where in Nebraska is not known, but they brought what they could on the wagon and had to completely start over in a new place and had neighbors who were spread out a good distance between, most likely miles. Shortly after settling, Mary met a blacksmith named Joseph Thompson. In 1863, when she was 18, they were married and began setting up their own home in the same area. The couple started their new life in the middle of the Civil War, and even though the fighting wasn't happening in the Midwest, the economic devastation and impacts were felt all the same. The states in the East were the predominant industrial producers, and that is where most of the destruction was occurring. That severely impacted the manufacturing of products and food availability, such as sugar. But the new couple did what they could to build their new life and grow the necessities. After getting married, Joseph decided to try farming. Personally, blacksmithing is cooler, but whatever, up to him. And their fruit options were limited to grapes, plums, and crab apples. After several years of farming, Joseph built a flour mill on the banks of the Nemaha River. In 1874, Mary's family moved further west. Her husband wanted to explore Washington and Oregon as an option for a new settlement. So the family packed up all of their possessions and took the train to San Francisco. The train ride was a grueling 11 days with no sleeper car available, so they had to sleep on the main seats for almost 2 weeks. Okay, let's take a minute to appreciate that situation. You're on a train. Imagine being on Amtrak for 11 days. Sitting in gen population with just the regular chairs, nothing to sleep in, You have children who are very restless. There's no shower, probably no deodorant. That would be the most grueling trip I could ever imagine. So once they arrived in San Francisco, they took an ocean steamer, so not only an 11-day train ride, but then also an ocean steamer to Portland, Oregon. They explored the West Coast once again in a covered wagon as they pioneered for a new settlement. After leaving their home and traveling such a long distance, Mary's husband did not think either state was a good option. So they came back. Can only imagine those conversations, because what an emotional trip that must have been. So after arriving back in Nebraska and finding new land to settle, Mary's husband set up another flour mill on the Nemaha River, some 30 miles from where the first stood. They lived there until about 1900 when they moved again to Spokane, Washington. Her husband purchased a homestead, and they lived there until his death in 1922. Over their marriage, they had 6 children. And in 1932, the Spokansman Review published a story about Mary Thompson. She was 87 at the time of the interview and had lived through the Civil War and was now finishing her life during the Great Depression. Her outlook on things was so positive and encouraging. She was recorded as saying, "It amuses me to hear people talk of the Depression and hard times generally. We do not really know what hard times and depression are. We've become so accustomed to luxury that we cannot be reconciled to doing without many things not really essential to our physical well-being. It would seem to me that we have much to be grateful for in the way of comfortable housing, plenty of food and clothing, which added to many friends makes our lives especially ideal." The reporter of this article was so impressed by her that he included that he could not but be impressed with this kindly, optimistic spirit of the good lady. She made light of the many hardships of her life and seemed only to breathe a spirit of gratitude because of her many blessings and because things are as well with her as they are. What an amazing legacy she left. One for her daughter, who was really concerned about her getting the credit for her contributions to being a pioneer out west. But also at the end of the day, just being positive and thankful for what she had, not complaining about what she didn't have or the hardships. She just took it on the chin and just appreciated her life as it was. Now that's an awesome legacy. For more information, visit my blog at rebelliouscorsets.com.